It's strange to think that we're already nearing the end of the Witch Queen. 2022 felt like a blur, but was also one of the strangest years of my life, and the Witch Queen was a solid part of that. I remember the announcement of the Witch Queen. It was a day before I moved out to university, and from that point onwards to February, life felt so slow. I was stressed, going through a rough part of my life, questioning if certain parts of my life were right for me. Dealing with all that, of course I had the support of friends and family, but throughout that struggle, I had one thing that distracted me from those tough times, and that was Destiny. I know it may sound like cringe, but Destiny's been a huge part of my life and it's got me through a lot of challenging times. But anyway, DLCs for Destiny have been rocky. Really, really rocky. I had my hopes up. Bungie really know how to sell their game to us, and their announcement stream and their promises to us about delivering the best campaign to date was something I've heard before many times over. But throughout Beyond Light, the story's been getting much better, to the point where if you were a veteran or a new player, you were involved in the story each week at reset. My standards were high, and did Bungie do as they promised? Did they bring us the best campaign to date? I remember watching the clock at my lecture hall, racing back from class, running to the house and into my room, only an hour until release, making sure everything's downloaded, drivers updated, and making sure all my friends are on and ready to play. The first time in Destiny's history, I had no struggle getting into the game. That's when my fire team went into the legendary campaign, and it was brilliant. It took my team just around 11 hours to complete. I remember our reactions to some of the twists that they threw at us, and the reveal of the witness is something I fondly remember. Still, almost a year later, I can confidently say that the Witch Queen is still my favourite Destiny campaign to date. It was perfect. That's the only way I can describe it, the only word that comes to my mind. While the campaign was a huge part of the DLC, there was a slew of other things to do. Weapon crafting was a great decision, albeit a bit janky within release, with the trillions of materials and the insanely low drop chances of red borders. But with the changes to crafting since, I'm always looking forward to the next set of weapons to grind for and craft. Void 3.0 released alongside the Witch Queen, and it was insane. The build crafting opportunities and the new subclass verbs have been nothing but a great addition to the game. We got a new weapon type called glaives. They're cool, but not really my thing. While we had replayable missions and harder difficulties and the Wellspring, I had my eyes on one thing. The raid. Yes.
Let's go!
I honestly didn't know what to expect when I went into the raid for the first time. But Vow the Disciple is my favourite raid to date in terms of boss fights, lore, and overall gameplay. It just all works so well. The weapons are my favourite looking raid weapons, and not only are they all good, apart from the glaive, you can craft them to get enhanced perks. You can't get any better than that. Overall, I give the Witch Queen a 9.5 out of 10. The campaign, spectacular. The raid, a spectacle. Void 3.0 and Origin traits are still one of my favourite changes in Destiny history. Only con is the weapon crafting costs and the abysmal drop rates of red borders. Normally seasons that release alongside DLC aren't usually the best. Undying and Hunt are rated some of the worst seasons in Destiny's history, and it's mostly because they're overshadowed by the DLC. It's not only that, they feel disconnected from the storyline of the campaign. I look at Season and Hunt and I was surprised at how good the writing got throughout the season, but it felt disconnected from Beyond Light, and the seasonal content felt awful to play. But Season of the Risen really surprised me. It took place alongside the campaign. The first mission of the Witch Queen was also the mission for Season of the Risen, and I thought that was so smart. The story had us following Empress Keitel, and us capturing the Lucent Hive and studying them to uncover their connection to the light. Alongside, we had conflict of Saladin being a mentor to Crow, who was originally under Cyrus's wing, but we all know how that turned out. While Crow was still unsure of himself and getting to grips with the world around him, while he was in the way most of the time, I sympathised for his character. The character development for Saladin was a much needed one, and it was great. He's still the grumpy old man we both love and hate, but he finally had some character and reasoning. And with the seasonal story ending where Saladin offers himself up as forfeit, so Crow's mistakes go unpunished. Isn't that nice? With the story out the way, we got new seasonal loot to chase, and we got a handful of weapons that we're able to craft. Each weapon has its place within the sandbox and has great perk options to suit your playstyle. I instantly went for the ignition code grenade launcher, and it's my highest level weapon to date. Even though I now have the better version in the form of Forbearance, I still treasure this weapon dearly. With Psyops Battlegrounds being the primary way to unlock these weapons to craft and focus, this seasonal activity had to land. And it did. It's short and fun, and if you want to get the best loot, play it on Legend difficulty. I still play it months after release. With the ability to focus weapon drops and having the option to buy red birds at the table, this was a much needed addition to the game. 9 out of 10. Controversial take, this season is good. There, I said it. While I do agree with much of the community's complaints about this season, I really like the theme and the direction it headed. When we think of Destiny, we think of dumb fun looter shooter, not this sad, depressing tone this season brought to us, and that was one of the reasons why it wasn't so well received. That and the mission structure. While the writing for the season was top notch, the mission structure wasn't. The first two missions I thought were great, and then the week after I was practically thrown into the same mission, just with different dialogue and Crow finally besting his nightmare. Then it was the same with Zavala and Keitel. I was more disappointed than anything else. Season of the Risen's missions felt new every week, but this season just felt the same, albeit with different endings every second week. With this, you might be asking why I think this season is good, and that's because the shift in tone. While the mission structure was weak, the writing was the reason I was hooked. That and the performances of the talented voice acting that went alongside it. I can easily look past the copy-paste-esque mission design because of what we learned about each character, even the ones that were not fully involved within the season. We had the discourse between Amanda and Crow after she found out who he really was. We had hidden lore tellings about Cage 6 haunting Ikora and taunting her about the past. The premise and writing for the season was fantastic, and I was a fan. The Leviathan was brought back to us, with veterans feeling nostalgic and new players wondering who this belongs to. We follow Callus, an old enemy of ours and the father of Keitel, who wants to become a disciple of the Witness. With the Leviathan now being corrupted, Crow, Zavala and Keitel had to confront their nightmares. A lot of people were mixed about the Leviathan coming back, complaining about reused assets along with opulent weapons. I personally don't care. If it fits into the storyline and makes sense, then it doesn't bother me at all. With all that, we got a new activity called Containment, and it played more like a public event, which I thought was cool but eventually got really stale. We had rotating or reused bosses, but it didn't really stick with me like a Rivals public event did. With this, we got a really cool looking seasonal armor set, and some okay guns to craft. I only really went for Mini-Tool and Bump in the Night. The introduction of Solar 3.0 was insanely good, with unkillable titans, warlocks with infinite grenades and hunters with massive burst damage. While in the end it did get toned down, our warlock has never been off Solar once. But easily the highlight of the season, we did get a new dungeon, Duality. Duality, in short, is a great dungeon. It has a great story to it where we dive into Callus's mindscape. We fight his deepest regrets and steal memories and knowledge from him. While we hear little story beats in between encounters and find out more about his past through collectibles, This really intrigued me in his character, and actually made me like him more than hate him. Encounters were challenging, with a cool new mechanic of hopping in and out of the Nightmare Realm. The loot is solid, with ugly armor but with great weapons, and having a brand new archetype of linear was something to chase. The exotic is meh, but this dungeon was easily the highlight of this season, and even throughout the year. The season had a finale on its final week, with us confronting Callus personally and ridding the nightmares for good. While being unable to stop Callus from converging to a disciple, we did manage to rid the nightmares, turning them into memories. 7.5. During the release of this season, Lightfall was revealed to us all, and it looks fantastic. You know what wasn't fantastic? This season. I really wanted to like this season. A season themed around pirates should have easily won the hearts of the community, but it didn't. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the community since this is my review, but I just really didn't click well with this season's story and activities. The first week was a blast, as it was all new, but the party had to end at some point, and that was already in the first few weeks of this season. While the premise of the season was cool, us finding out about Mithrax's past, Aramis coming back, and Nezarec being brought up was cool in retrospect, but it didn't play out well at all. The activities were alright. Catch Crash being the best activity isn't much of a surprise, and I only really played on Master for Pinnacles. I honestly don't have much else to say about this story. I just didn't click with it, nor did I really care. When the story was ending, I eventually tuned in, but that was mostly it. But you know what was good? King's Fall. You don't know how much you miss something until it comes back to you. I know that's not the quote, but it implies to me. I only played King's Fall once in D1 when I was a little boy. Now playing the reprised version in 1440p, 165 FPS in the new game engine, it looks stunning and plays just as well. Just like the work they did in Vault of Glass, they changed the slower, more mundane parts in King's Fall and made them better, making the raid feel kind of new. While my only gripe is them not bringing back all the weapons, just like Vogue, this raid is one of the best, and it's free for all players. The weapons also very good and craftable, albeit the odds aren't in the player's favour. But once you do manage to craft them, you have the best guns of that archetype to chase. My Smite of Moraine hasn't left my kinetic slot since. The armour is as good as always, even though I wish we could get the Age of Triumph set, but some things are too good to be true. With King's Fall being an obvious highlight, so was Arc 3.0, and its new verbs and it being the last of the light subclasses to get reworked. The trifecta was complete, and it is fun. I still use it on my Titan, going Mach 10 after a kill, yeeting myself into every enemy possible, and charging up my fist for a devastating final blow is just damn fun. As with every season, we got new armor and weapons, and the seasonal set is cool. New seasonal weapons are added and craftable, and with none of them being to my taste, I gladly got my hands on the sidearm with Volt Shot and was happy. Honestly, I have nothing else to say about this season. I expected another kind of Grasp of Avarice and was let down. With all that makes a season good, Season of Plunder didn't have. 4 out of 10. Listen, I had a script all written out and finished before the season finale was even happening. I had everything voiced and prepared, but then the season finale was revealed. Now, after the fact, I've rewritten this entire part of the video purely because of the finale. What was given to us in mission and cutscene was nothing short of brilliant. The emotions and quality that came from this was enough to prize this as my favourite season in Destiny, even above Opulence and Chosen. This season was a breath of fresh air. It was serious compared to the likes of Plunder, it had great missions unlike Haunted. I went into the seasons with not low expectations, but lower than average expectations. But the story had me coming back week by week. We had the Brave family return to us center stage. Rasputin is finally alive, but his war stats are under attack, and are vulnerable to the likes of Ziva, Wrath and Aramis. This is a season I want you all to play. Do the story, conclude with the finale, it is well worth your time. I never thought I'd feel actual emotions from a Destiny cutscene, but this was powerful. This whole time we fought to keep Rasputin alive, we found out Clovis' real intentions and shut him out. We tried to figure out the best way to keep the war stats under control and not risk humanity to be collateral damage in this nearing war with the Witness. In the end, with all our efforts, Rasputin sacrificed himself to save the Traveler. We lost our best shot at winning this war against the Witness. This feeling of we're going to lose is the only thing on my mind. So, I cannot push this enough. Please play the season's story. You will not regret it. Along with this season, we got a bunch of new and reprised weapons return and to be crafted. With most of the Seraph weapons being great, our king, in the form of the Achilles SMG, returned, and it's the best in its class yet again. This season's armor and exotic kinda sucked, but that's all I can say. But do you know what didn't? The brand new dungeon, Spire of the Watcher. If you were to compare this to Duality, the majority would prefer this dungeon, and that's no surprise. While I do prefer Duality purely because of its difficulty, I can see why people really like this dungeon. The space cowboy theme is something we've all been asking for. The mechanics are really easy but don't feel repetitive. The loot is pretty good, with the machine gun and grenade launcher being my favourites. I love Mars, and any chance I can get to return to it in its partial form, I will gladly do so. I love the environment and the surrounding areas, and how the inside of the building contrasts the outside. This dungeon is a great time, and won't have you pulling your hair out like Duality would. Along with a great dungeon, we got a superb exotic mission, Seraph Shield. Deepstone Crypt is a top raid for me, and this mission is up there with some of my favourites. I loved my first time, and I never lost that feeling going back to that mission to collect the other parts for Revision 0. Well, unlike other players. With the season over, I can say that this is the best season I've ever played. Although it may not have the replayability such as Menagerie or 4Gs, the story alone puts it up there. And this season is one I'll reminisce about in the future. 9.5 out of 10. So, there's my review of this year in Destiny. I know I might have glossed over some parts of this year, such as PvP's growing problems or parts of the other seasons you might have enjoyed or hated. I just wanted to focus on what I enjoyed or disliked in this year. Overall, I do think this has been one of the better years in Destiny's history in terms of content and story. I know the seasonal loop is growing tired and old, and hopefully in Lightfall we'll get change. While my score averages around 8 out of 10 for this year, I do think the Witch Queen has been one of the biggest impacts in this franchise. I've never done a video like this before, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it. This is the first time I've done something like this, and I put a lot of effort into it. So, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.